You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, and co-host Keelan Harvey on Alternative Talk AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage experts Tina Mitchell and Keelan Harvey.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell.
And co-host Keelan Harvey. Your
local mortgage experts right here in 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, June 30th show. It's a great day to talk about money, and that's what the show is all about. How to make money, save money, and have a better quality of life for you and your family. If you're hearing our show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast, but we're here to answer any questions or connect you with the guests that we have on the show today. Please call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. In studio right now, Dawn Desonier with Transitions in Dementia Care. And our topic today is key strategies for addressing challenging behavior in dementia care. Dawn, thank you so much for coming back in studio. It's great to see you again.
Tina, I'm glad to be back.
And a little bit about Dawn Desonier, Certified Senior Advisor, CSA, provides individual coaching along with family facilitation and elder care mediation services to caregivers and families of loved ones with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. His journey to this professional calling is grounded in having been a caregiver to his wife, Nancy, who was diagnosed with early-onset dementias 2008 and passed away from this illness in 2012. Dawn has a certificate in Gerontology from University of Washington, as well as a Juris Doctor degree from the University of Arizona School of Law. And again, I think that this is a topic, Dawn, that a lot of our listeners can relate to. As the host of the show, I can, because my husband's mother is going through this transition with her life is right now. So thank you so much for coming again in studio with us.
I'm glad to be able to be here and share whatever information and insight I can give to people that are facing into this journey.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Dawn, can you share a little background with us? Help us to understand, what is dementia, and is it the same as Alzheimer's?
Keelan, that's a good question. In fact, I was at a senior resource fair a few days ago, and somebody asked me, dementia, is that Alzheimer's or something along those lines? So the easiest way to understand it is the term dementia refers to or represents a set of symptoms associated with cognitive decline. And examples of that might be memory loss, difficulty with eating, bathing, and toileting, what they often call the activities of daily living, or even more complicated matters like preparing meals, doing your budget, paying your bills, driving and shopping, and so forth, which are sometimes called instrumental activities of daily living. So dementia represents the symptoms that may be displayed. The disease that generates those symptoms is the disease that they might have. And Alzheimer's is the most common and frequent disease that somebody might have that would display those symptoms. In fact, 60 to 80% of individuals who are exhibiting dementia-like symptoms have Alzheimer's. Of course, there are many other kinds of dementia illnesses or diseases. Vascular cognitive impairment, for example, which is what I believe my wife Nancy had mostly. Dementia with Lewy bodies and other illnesses as well.
So, Dawn, why is it important to understand the difficult behaviors in those with dementia?
Well, that is a real good question, and it begins with this premise that, when you're caring for somebody, a loved one who has dementia, that experience of caregiving can be really challenging, but it also can be rewarding. The goal should always be to enhance the well-being of the care receiver. When somebody with dementia exhibits challenging behaviors or difficult behaviors and you're trying to figure out what to do, the thing to remember is the person that is in distress always has a reason for being there.
Sure.
Rarely is a challenging behavior just a random thing that's happening out of the blue. So it's important to explore that, especially when the individual with dementia can't actually tell you what's going on. For example, they may be in pain or experiencing a lot of discomfort and maybe are past the point where they can verbalize that. So they may exhibit behavior that it's an attempt to get your attention.
Yeah.
And the importance is to be able to engage that individual so that you can understand what's happening with them and help them.
So, Don, what are some examples of challenging behaviors specifically?
Well, there's a variety of them, as you can imagine. The ones that are most common and that are experienced would be wandering. somebody that leaves the house and goes down the street, or just is in their residence, is wandering around seemingly aimlessly, but not likely that is the case. Aggressiveness. Sailor language, we'll call it, especially if that's not something that they are normally thought of as being a normal behavior, swearing like a sailor, yelling, hitting, just refusing to do things like taking a bath and that kind of thing.
That makes sense.
So with caregivers, what are some of the common mistakes that you see that caregivers make?
Well, it's interesting using the word mistake, and what I try to tell caregivers, because people will make mistakes, if that's the word to use, especially when you're new to this, which virtually everybody is. Nobody is trained to care for somebody that's diagnosed with dementia.
That's a scary thought.
I try to tell people that you're doing the best you can with what you know. But when somebody is faced with a challenging behavior, it's pretty common to want it to go away because it's uncomfortable. It's just uncomfortable to be facing into that. You don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Denial could be one reaction to that. Well, this isn't happening, or, gosh, I hope it stops soon. Impatience, especially with men. Men, not atypically, want to be problem solvers and want to fix it.
Sure.
And so they may bypass getting an understanding of what's actually happening and just try to take care of it and problem solve it, or try to reason their way through it, try to fix it. And that's not always successful.
So when you're facing these difficult circumstances, how important is it to really know and understand the person you're caring for?
That's pretty critical. Everybody is unique, and everybody has a story. Everybody has a background. When you're caring with somebody with dementia, it's not done in a vacuum. They have a background. They have a history. They have a story of who they are. Probably the best example I can give of that is there's a very wonderful doctor by the name of G. Allen Power. He's a geriatric specialist, and he wrote the seminal work, Dementia Beyond Drugs, Changing the Culture of Care. And he talks about an individual that was residing in a care residence who would typically become angry, anxious, demanding, and upset after every dinner. He would continually demand, I want a line, I want a line. And the staff were going nuts trying to figure out what is going on, what is he saying, what does he mean? They even tried to role play him wandering around yelling, I want a line, to try to figure out what was going on. And eventually they talked to his wife. And what they found out from his wife is that when he was active and engaged and healthy, he traveled quite a bit in his work. And what he would typically do when he was out of town, which was a lot, is after dinner, he would pick up the phone, probably a phone, probably not a cell phone, and call his wife to check in with her. And once they heard that from his wife, they realized, well, heck, when he's yelling, I want a line, I just want a telephone line.
Yeah.
And that made a big difference. And so the point was they were patient enough to try to figure out what is really going on with this individual. So the more you understand who the person is, the more you might get a hint or a clue as to what is actually happening.
Yeah, and so a good key takeaway with that is to make sure that you're really communicating with the family, the ones that were around them the most, that might understand where that's coming from, because it's always associated with something, a memory in their past, right?
That's right. In most residential care communities these days, and even when Nancy was going into a memory care residence, try to figure out and understand from the family and friends, who is this person and what are they about?
Yeah. So let's talk about Nancy. And I just, I know a lot of us do what we do because we're passionate about it. And that's always connected to a story or a why behind that. And obviously, when I introduced you coming into the show today, is, your why behind this is, from your wife. And so what did you learn in that process when caring for Nancy?
Well, that's a good question. And as I think about that, I think of a number of situations where Nancy was exhibiting behaviors and how I handled it at that time and what might have actually been going on. So late in her illness, when she was living at home, she would often slam doors. Just slam doors, walk around, angrily slamming doors, walking in and out of the house, slamming doors, slamming bedroom doors. She got aggressive, not necessarily in a wielding a knife sort of way, but just, just not characteristic of her. Got very aggressive. we were hosting a wine group. We had a wine group that different couples hosted each month, and we were hosting this particular month. And she couldn't find her purse, and she yelled out at the top of her lungs, using, again, a sailor term, "Where is my purse?" And I remember pulling Nancy aside and going, you really can't say that. There's people here. Our friends are here. We'll try to find your purse. Another couple of examples is she would sit in a chair as we're sitting at home and go, can't anyone understand? I just want to go home. And she would get upset because I couldn't understand why she just wanted to go home. Of course, we were sitting in our home. I came to understand later that she really was saying, why can't I return to a time in my life when things were at peace, when I knew what was going on and I felt safe and secure? Finally, I just thought of an incident. It was late at night. We were getting ready for bed. She said something that triggered me yelling at her, and I regretted that. She kind of flinched, and I realized, there's probably something going on here, and I just wasn't paying attention.
Wow. So it seems very personal to the individual and what they're going through around them. So I'd imagine the environment itself probably plays a pretty big role in that too. How can the environment trigger challenging behaviors?
It's vitally important that when an individual is living in a memory care residence or even at home, but I'm thinking typically of a memory care residence, that the environment is inviting, it's welcoming. Is there excess noise? Is there a crowded space? I've been touring some recently opened memory care residents, and I'm blown away by how wide the hallways are, how welcoming the rooms are, how friendly and engaging the staff is, that it's lit in a nice, bright, friendly, open, sunny sort of way as opposed to being too dark. The doors that lead out of the memory care residence are disguised so they don't look like doors, which means it doesn't look like they're being kept in. A perfect example of environment was when we were celebrating Mother's Day in 2011, and I invited all our family, her stepchildren from her previous marriage. It was going to be a crowd, and I reserved the dining room private dining room that they made available for people that wanted to have family celebrations. And I was warned by the executive director, that's a lot of people. That might be difficult. Oh, no. I want her family to be with her. Well, it was crowded, and he was overly stimulated. Yeah. And she got upset and anxious and angry and started exhibiting behavior that suggested that she was very put off. Not because she didn't love people or love her family, but it was just too much.
Yeah. So, Don, being reactive to a difficult situation could be a problem. So how do you avoid that seemingly normal human response?
Well, I'm thinking back to the example I gave when Nancy was doing whatever she was doing, and I yelled at her, and she kind of flinched. And, I've regretted that, but I look back and I realized that, one of the things we do when somebody is exhibiting, especially when you're tired as heck, at the end of a long day and you're caring for your loved one. And it's just one more thing. And how do I deal with this? The natural reaction is to try to get rid of it, tone it down, minimize the chaos, as it were. And the important thing to do, unless there's safety concerns where you need to jump in and do something really radical, is to pause, take a breath, and try to figure out what exactly is going on. And not automatically react to the behavior, because it's very easy to do that because it's not comfortable. To be able to recognize that you're normal, you're human, you're going to react, you're going to get angry, but step back and pause and realize that the best approach is to engage this individual and figure out what's going on. And sometimes that may mean, if you're really, really angry, is you just say, what? I can't talk to you right now. I need to leave the room for a few minutes. I'll be back.
Yeah, that's a skill in itself. I think, everybody can learn in life that we got to take a moment and not just react with our emotions, especially for somebody in that circumstance. I've heard that redirection is a decent approach. Is that true?
It is. And by redirection, Keelan, what we mean is somebody is behaving in a certain way, and maybe it's upsetting to other residents or it's distracting. And one way of engaging an individual who is exhibiting that kind of behavior is to say, hey, let's take a look at that photo album that you were showing me of your family. That ought to be fun, and get their attention off what it is that might be upsetting them so that things are calmer. When I first placed Nancy in memory care and I would go to leave after visiting her in those early weeks, she would naturally want to follow me out the door. We're going home. Don's leaving. And the staff would step in, hey, Nancy, let's go fold some towels over here or do something different. So that's redirection. And most of the time, that's a pretty good approach. However, it can also be used as an excuse to not stay present and engage with what's going on with this individual. Because if all you did was redirect, you're not going to get to the heart of what's actually happening. And the better approach, if you're able to do it, is to sit and figure out, why is this person behaving the way they are? Yes, I could just redirect them, and that'll be the end of that, but that is not going to address their immediate distress.
Yeah, we've got a minute here. We've got to wrap up our time together, Don. But, it seems like the approach is really just to be as patient as you can. I remember the last time that I talked with you in studio, it's really about adjusting to their new world and where they're living right now and being a part of that and really just trying to help them navigate through this, this new journey in life, because that's really what it is.
That's exactly right. If there's any message I can leave with people that are facing into these kinds of challenges, is to be willing to be present and engaged in the moment of now, because there's usually something going on with this individual. And wouldn't you want, if you were having a difficulty, have somebody be able to pay attention to you, focus on you, and get underneath what's going on so that you can have some peace and serenity?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Don. We appreciate you coming back in studio and look forward to having you back again soon.
Tina, thank you so much. I enjoyed being here and sharing my information with your audience.
Yep. Coming up next on the Money Hour, choosing a great world tour to result in a winning transaction. Susan Ward with Windermere Real Estate Yarrow Bay, right here at 1150 a.m. KKNW after the short break.